Hello everyone, and welcome back to another remote sensing lecture video. And in this video, what I want to do is I want to talk about something called image classification. Right. Image classification. Right, and we've kind of already indirectly talked about this when we talked about the idea of image interpretation and digitizing in the previous week's modules. And we said that we could sort of trace, right? If you remember back to our lab, we traced objects. So for example, we were like, hey, I'm confident that this is a golf course. So I would go ahead and I would trace this golf course. I'm not doing a good job here, but that's not the point. Right? We could say that that's a golf course. So we could say that, every pixel inside of here is a golf course. Right? And we could say that, this here is a parking lot. It's because every pixel inside of there is a parking lot. We already kind of went through this. And with the Lake Meredith lab, you probably grew very, very tired of this manual digitizing. And maybe you were thinking to yourself, God, there must be a better way. Well, there is, in a sense. And that better way is called image classification. And that's where we let the computer do the heavy lifting. So rather than us going through, zooming in, placing vertices, and tracing out the entirety of this golf course, or the entirety of this cul-de-sac, we say, hey, computer, do the work for us. And that's image classification. And so we're going to spend the next several weeks talking about image classification, talking about the sort of nuts and bolts of what goes into image classification, the different types of classification, how they work, so that hopefully by the end of the rest of this semester, you come out with a really solid understanding, maybe not necessarily of the math behind it, but at least of the concepts of what image classification is and why it's useful. All right, so again, the idea that we're aiming for here is to let computers figure out what each pixel is. Right, this is sort of the layman's term definition of image classification. Okay, and again, this is in a hope to replace the tediousness of us having to go through and manually click everywhere in the image to try to digitize out polygons for, say, forested areas and water and parking lots, right? We're going to try and let computers do the work for us. And so there's two approaches. Well, there's really three approaches. Right, the first approach is manual classification. Ooh, make that look a little bit cleaner, right? Is manual classification. Right, and we already did this, right? This is that digitizing. Right, the second approach, and this is the one that we're going to talk about this week, is this idea of unsupervised classification. Right, an unsupervised classification, the idea is that all we say is, hey, computer, here's an image. I want you to find a certain number of distinct pixel groups. Right, it might see this blue and call it a group. It might see this bright white and call it a group. It might see these greens and call them a group, right? But the thing is, it knows nothing about the image, right? It just has the pixel values and nothing else, right? We haven't told it anything about the image. Right, so unsupervised classifications, and again, we're going to talk a lot more about these. So if this sort of seems very broad terms, that's because it is. we're going to drill down into unsupervised classification this week, is that it uses just pixel values to create unique pixel groups. Right, and these pixel groups, these are what we would call classes. And again, right, it might say, okay, well, all of these green pixels, these are all going to be one group. All these blue pixels, right, it might say these are one group. And again, all these white pixels, it might say these are a group. Right? These are unique pixel groups based on their spectral signatures, right, their pixel values. But it has no idea what these are. Right? It doesn't know that this is sand. It doesn't know this is water. It doesn't know that these are forests. It just says, hey, this is a group of unique pixels. This is a group of unique pixels. This is a group of unique pixels. It doesn't know anything. Okay, so that's unsupervised. And again, we're going to talk a lot more about this in just a second. The third group are what are called supervised classifications. And we're going to spend 2 weeks on supervised classifications. And the way that supervised classifications work is we give them the image, right? We give them just like we give the unsupervised classification, right? We give the supervised classification the image, but we also give it what's called right? But we also give it what's called training data, which, as the sort of name implies here, right? Training data is additional information, right? So as with unsupervised, we just gave it the image and said, hey, algorithm, do your best. With supervised classification, we'll give it the image, but we'll also give it a bunch of pixels and say, hey, we have this pixel right here, right here, right here, right here, right here, right here, and right here. We're saying, hey, algorithm, not only do you have these pixel values in this image, but we also are telling you that, hey, these pixels right here represent trees. And we might say, hey, image, these pixels right here, right, these represent parking lots. And we might say that, hey, image, or hey, algorithm, right, these pixels up here, right, these represent water. So we're giving the supervised classification, not only are we giving it the image, but we're also giving it training data, which are user-defined classes with sample pixels. All right, and so what a supervised classification is going to do is it's going to take in that image and it's going to try to find a user-defined class for each pixel. All right, so instead of using just the pixel values to create unique pixel groups with no input from us, supervised classifications are going to say, hey, you've given me some information. You've told me the things you want me to look out for. You've told me to look out for forests and parking lots and sand and water. So I'm going to take that information and I'm going to try to develop a model that gives you back all of the pixels in the image assigned to one of those classes. Okay? So this is sort of a 5,000-foot view of classification. And if this doesn't make sense right now, that's okay, because we're going to go through in specific this week, talk about unsupervised classification. We're going to dig a little bit deeper and hopefully it'll make more sense of what classification is in general and what unsupervised classification is specifically. And then the next few weeks, we'll dig into the supervised classifications. So hopefully this makes sense. And if you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you.